Hello and welcome to the ORCA pod covering Australian LRGs. Once again, back to discuss Canberra Season 3, Canberra versus the world. We are not deep, partially deep into the merge, as evidenced by my lovely merge buff. And we will be still talking about all the fun happenings of this week's episode. I think there's a lot to get into in terms of some of the controversial production decisions, Dan. Also a plethora of interviews if these guests decide to show up. I was hoping to have Amy ready to interview the queen of the Swamp of Sadness, but she is not here yet. But that's fine. I have another absolute queen to join me. First, let me welcome Dani.
Oh, am I the queen or is it somebody else that we're looking for?
You're all queens. You're a queen. How are you today, Dani?
Yeah, I'm fine. I've relocated. The study's being used at the moment, so I'm hoping to not speak too loudly and wake my children up.
Stay quiet and sit in front of a bland wall. It sounds like an incredible episode you're going to be bringing to us. And now welcoming our another queen to join us, Amy. I was going to have Amy first, but she's MIA. So instead, I'm going to bring everyone. Oh my gosh, she disappeared. She was right there and she's disappeared.
Oh no.
Where did you go, Squin? Okay, when one of these people shows up again, we will. Okay, she's back. She was beloved. She was a crowd favorite from the get-go. So disappointing that we won't get to see her activities and antics in the post-merge. But I'm sure, look, sometimes things do returning seasons and returning players. And that we'll see her again one day if Canberra Survivor was to do that, because she was amazing. Welcome, Squin.
Hello. Thank you for that lovely introduction.
Just gonna shuffle it right. Hey, there we go. No, you're very welcome. We're very excited to have you on the show. You were such a positive energy on the season. Is that just how you are in everyday life? Just like floating through, making everyone feel great about everything?
Oh, thank you. I think I I like to think that I am like that just in everyday life. I think going into Survivor Canberra, and I think I even mentioned perhaps in my cast video, the type of person I am in real life was the type of person I wanted to try and be in Survivor Canberra, like trying to be a good team player, a leader if I needed to be, remaining loyal to people, just trying to get the team to win as many challenges as possible, coming from a background of so many team-orientated things growing up. I have since learnt, though, that the person you are in real life versus the person you are or can be in Survivor isn't always optimal for your game. So that's a big lesson I've learned, which I'm pretty grateful for. But I probably wasn't always a positive person. I think growing up I was probably a little bit more pessimistic and narrow-minded, but you go through stuff in life and you change your perspective a little bit. But I'm definitely more an optimistic, half glass full person now.
What should you have done differently? What should you have come into the game and done differently to perform better? I can't think there's too much to critique about what you did. Maybe you're too likable. That's probably the thing. You're more of a dickhead.
Maybe. And look, I'm using my proper podcast mic tonight. So look, Andy, if you're watching, don't hold it against me being
I need my
podcast equipment.
Is that a Yeti?
It is actually. It is. Someone gave it to me. Yeah, someone gave it to me. So
Yeti Pals.
Yeti Pals, yeah. If you know, you know.
Mine actually wasn't plugged in, so thank you for that reminder.
That's okay. What I would have done differently, certainly, especially on the eve of me being voted out, I think I probably could have tried to had some more in-depth or sharper conversations with the likes of Oscar, Sab, and Pauline to try and convince them to vote for Aiden and not for me. I think I could have tried to be a little bit more assertive. I definitely didn't have as much of a strategy game compared to the other players this season, but they set a pretty high standard of the strategy game in this season. Like, we had multiple players who were very intelligent and very well versed in how to play Survivor. So I think I would have done things like that. I think I would have, even started some rumors like John did during our first elimination, where he said, "Oh, Jay's put Eden's name out there," just stirring the pot like that. I don't really do it in real life, and if you're ever going to do it in life, it's in Survivor.
100%.
It certainly came across that you were playing an honest, upfront game, that you wouldn't spread malicious rumors that you knew not to be true. And I was just saying, Aiden was an ally to you from early on, and you didn't obviously feel super comfortable about throwing him under the bus, even where you were in danger. Though I'd have to say it would have been very difficult for you to throw Aiden under the bus and it stick, because frankly, what are you saying? Like, Aiden, he got a lot of votes. Like, he's fitting in well, but he takes time to warm up to people. Here I am. I'm super bubbly. I'm super loved. By the way, did you know I'm like a pro basketballer? So I'm just good at all the challenges. Like, these are great things to be telling people right before the merge. So I can't see how you could have sold them on an Aiden boot over yours, just because like you're so much more threatening. No offense to Aiden, I'm sure he wouldn't be bothered by that. We talked about it last week, but you're just threatening in a lot of ways that he isn't.
Yeah, and that's really interesting. What another big thing I learned from playing Survivor is things that I would naturally see as strengths would be seen as you're a threat as a player and as someone that can win the whole thing. So it was a double-edged sword of revealing those things about me, but I think I did it out of desperation. It could have gone either way. It could have been a ploy of, hey, keep this person around if we want to keep winning challenges, or, oh, they're going to win all the individual challenges, so let's get rid of them sooner rather than later. So that was a risk, but Leah, like I said, I had to take that gamble. I probably did it a little bit too late, and I was a bit annoyed at myself, because the one thing I did think about going into the game was I didn't want to share too much of myself where someone could use that against me, or I tried to fly a little bit under the radar. Maybe I could have gone a little bit further, but again, that's the risk of then coming across that you're not participating or socializing enough. But yes, I was a bit annoyed with myself, where I was like, I didn't want to tell everyone those things, particularly about my background of being an elite athlete, but I didn't have a fake immunity to pull out like John did. So that's all I had.
It doesn't matter, Squin. If you're not telling people about that, you just mentioned you do like a low-level podcast, and you got Andrew like sourcing you about that, like on the other tribe. She does a podcast. She must be able to talk to people. We're gonna get rid of her. Like Andrew's the one like criticizing someone for being verbose. Like,
yeah, like the irony. I mean, had I known that he had some of the most iconic confessionals in Survivor Canberra history, and he's trying to pin me for being a good talker, sure, I don't have as many metaphors up my sleeve as Andrew might, but yeah, it was really and I don't know if you remember, but it was just after the merge, and I can't remember if it was just after the merge and perhaps before the first vote, post-merge, where we ended up voting Maddie out. And he came to me with the metaphor about ending, sometimes relationships need to end because you need to start new ones. And me was just like, what do you want about, mate? But that was his invitation to flip. So I probably should have picked up on that. But yeah, it was just very funny that the biggest talker of the season was threatened by me having a podcast.
And of course, you were the only one who could solve that tentagram puzzle. So you were threatening in all sorts of ways, social, strategic, and physical. So triple threat, got to go. No surprises there. Did you have any thoughts back? I guess the one thing we haven't talked about with your game was probably the first tribal, where the tribe quickly formed as a group of 4 and a group of 3, and you had to put all your efforts into saving Aiden. And look, I don't regret. A 3 is normally pretty good, and you had a strong 3. But did you look back at the time and go, maybe a 3 out of 8 wasn't ideal, and we should have been looking to? I guess all you could have done is like bring in Jay. But like, do you ever look back and go, was there more relationships I could have been building in that early phase of the game?
Oh, absolutely. That's a really, really good point. And in hindsight, I think, obviously, you know, everything can't be edited and produced into the episode, but I did try and have more conversations with Maddie. I feel like Maddie was definitely one of those cusp players in our original Karawong tribe, where she was initially aligned with Eden, Bethany and Anthea, but she was also quite social with the rest of us. And I think she could have been a real cusp player for us if we got her in the four. She could have kind of flipped either way. But I was also trying to have more conversations with Eden, but mostly because I just thought he was fun. Not really like paying lots of attention to, or maybe I wasn't privy to as many conversations where Eden got to showcase a lot of his strategizing. I just thought he was fun. I just wanted to hang out with him. So I probably could have tried to stick around with him a bit more. And maybe could have been part of that four in a situation, or maybe gotten him to be part of our four. But I definitely think Maddie particularly was like a cusp player. And I think on the DL, now that some of the episodes have aired, Eden and I have been in contact saying that, you know, had we not merged so soon, or had we not actually had the tribe swap so soon, if we'd gone one more round, then tribe swap, I think Karawong may have looked a little bit differently, and Ed and I kind of spoke about who we possibly could have voted out instead of what ended up being as it was.
Who would have that been?
I don't know if he wants me to say, but
I think he said it on the program. Did he? He said on that episode before the swap that he was considering flipping over to your three with a possible, I think he said Bethany as the target.
Correct. Yes.
He was thinking about a flip to those three and taking out Bethany. He thought Bethany was a player, and he felt that perhaps she was taking up some of his airtime with his number one, Maddie. So he was considering that as an option before the swap. So we got that. That's on camera. That's the real deal.
Okay, phew, because still part of me is kind of like, I don't want to speak ill of people and say that we were planning to vote Bethany out, but like, it's the game. I have to remember it's a game.
And we all do the what ifs. I think I was saying this to Aiden last week, have like the scenarios you run in the group chat, and the several separate chats that you have. You're like, oh, if this had happened, would we have done this? And what would have been the outcome? Like, you run those what ifs for forever. They can go on like nonstop. So it's a perfectly normal conversation to have.
The fact is, though, there's not a lot you could have done with the way the numbers came out. If somehow you outlasted Aiden, then you get voted out instead of him at the merge, or somehow, you know, it's not John there, then you get voted out probably in this episode. Like, with the way the numbers went and the sort of threatening player you are, you know, you're never going to be long for this world. So it was just an unfortunate circumstance of bad swap luck after losing a couple of challenges. Not much you can do, you know, but you were an absolute joy on the screen. Everyone adored you. That must be lovely to have everyone just like think you're amazing. I think I'm amazing, but not in the way they think Squin's amazing, which is a bit more wholesome and
it's a very high standard. I mean, it's already humid up here and I'm sweaty, but now you're just making me blush up here.
So I'm sure you got lots of love from everyone, and you were wonderful on the show. Thank you for coming on and making the time. We're really looking forward to the rest of the episode. So thank you again. And thank you for everything you did on the show. Mel says she was so sad to see you go. She loves you.
Oh, bless. Yeah, thank you so much for having me, first of all, but also for making and hosting this ORCA podcast, because we really do enjoy it. And as I know, doing a podcast is a lot of hard work and preparation. It looks easy on the outside, but it is actually a lot of work outside our regular jobs. So yeah, thanks heaps for supporting the series and for having us on. We really enjoy watching your podcast and getting your perspectives.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Squin. Lovely. Thank you. See
Thank you.
Bye. So now, get these things right. Okay, there we go. We now have our second guest for this evening, the Queen of the Swamp of Sadness. There was some confusion about time zones because there's like 5 different ones in Australia right now because our country's insane. But we've resolved it now. No one's fault. And we are welcoming someone who is not confused as she dominated challenge after challenge in the Swamp of Sadness. Let's welcome Amy to the show. Welcome.
Hi, how you guys going?
Good. How are you?
I'm good. I've just got off a flight myself, so I'm just like, what time is it? So many confusions over here.
On a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the most surprised, how surprised were you at how awesome you are at all these challenges?
Maybe like a 7, maybe? I don't know. I think
confident, but not like
I was confident knowing that there was like it was puzzle based, a lot of them, and kind of strategy based, that sort of stuff. And I knew that's kind of where my strengths lie. I mean, if the team had pulled out
throwing things isn't strategy. I'm horrible at throwing.
Oh no, that is true. I still could not tell you how I succeeded.
The slingshot to the queen.
Yeah,
That's all puzzles. Don't just say it's all mental. There was a lot of physical skills in this too.
No, that is true. That is true. I think I was, weirdly enough, the most confident about a slingshot because I'm actually very weirdly good at archery, and I knew that going in. So I was like, okay, that's kind of similar. I've also since found out that I'm really good at throwing axes as well at targets.
Oh, so I do that. Awesome.
Yeah. So I think out of all of them, I was weirdly probably the most confident about that one. And then like the knot one with Maddie, it was one of those ones that it could have gone either way. Like I think we just both went in with separate strategies of trying to get as many knots in as possible. And then the one with Jay, like I was confident with the puzzle, and I was like, I just have to get through with throwing some balls on a string.
It was all incredible to watch. I was particularly there for the ride, having drafted you. I feel like it's such a great story. I feel like you were so incredibly disadvantaged in that first vote just by the way the pairs split off. Do you often do a lot of what ifs in terms of like, oh, if I'd just been paired with Oscar or if I've been paired with Ed or something, like it just could have been a completely different. Well, maybe Andrew goes on that first vote. Have you thought those sorts of what ifs through?
My biggest what if is what if I didn't actually go to the bathroom after speaking with Andrew, that perhaps I would have come back and had another chat with somebody else.
You didn't get to have another chat? Did you only chat with Andrew? Did you only chat with Andrew on that?
Yeah, so I came back from the bathroom because I think, as you guys would know, like the tribal council that was before ours went for a lot longer than it should have because they kept coming out of draw. So in my head, we had a lot more time up our sleeves than what we actually had. So I was like, cool, I'll quickly duck to the bathroom after chatting with Andrew, which we probably also chatted for too long as well, granted. Yeah. And I came back and I was starting to chat with Todd. This wasn't on camera, but I was starting to chat with Todd just as we were being told to line up. And Andrew came up then, and I don't know. I mean, I've said this publicly before, but I don't know if he confused who I was or was trying to give me a hint at something. But he actually came up to me and said, "So we're voting Amy, right?" And Todd's just nodding along. So I had indication that that's what was happening in tribal. So I wasn't completely blindsided. But it was literally as we're lining up to walk over to tribal council. So it gave me no time to do anything about it.
Getting stuck with Andrew was not ideal because, as you say, it was a long conversation, and he's probably a very difficult person to break away from. And it's like when you're one of those networking drinks, and like you sort of just, I want to go to someone else now, and you don't know how to get out of it. Not that he's also quite interesting. I'm very sure to speak to, so I imagine that was tricky. And then you didn't know that he'd sort of blown off Loz completely, so she was on like the warpath, and they decided, well, it's Andrew or his partner, like Amy, and like became Andrew's like default target. But who knows how your game might have unfolded if you'd stayed. But we know how your game unfolded not there. And what a story. Like, it's so many people come on these things and they just want to have a good experience, and they probably want to be remembered. They don't want to just be in 1 or 2 episodes and be forgotten. And, you're never going to be forgotten. Like, you're always going to be remembered as the person that just beasted out every one of these
beast. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
How was it? Because we didn't get a lot of this on the camera.
Yeah.
There's like teeny little bits, but not lots. How was it every time, someone new came in and they're like, oh, Amy, oh, how many jewels have you won? Like, were these the sort of questions that they're happy to understand what had gone on to get to that point?
I think everyone was kind of confused coming in, that they thought that we would all be kind of doing one jewel.
Okay.
Obviously.
Yeah, like a big edge. Yeah.
Like a big challenge together. I don't think they were expecting just to see one person. So a few of them came up as like, oh, well, where is everyone else? And also it was just it actually never got old, me going, oh, well, I'm it. Everyone else is left because I've picked them off one by one. But it was also just like a case of them, for all of them, it was a case of them really meeting me for the first time, because they were all from the original Currawong tribe, and aside from that one tribe, the first two challenges, like, we had no kind of time together at all. And the nature of challenges is you're not working with the other team, obviously. So it was a lot of kind of confusion of like, what's gone on, here, and also, who are you?
Who are you, and how have you defeated everyone that's come before? What are your magic skills? I'm very concerned now about this challenge. It was such a fun thing to watch, and I think it was a really good balance. We've seen LRGs do the Edge of Extinction equivalent before. I think this was a lot better. I think it was fantastic to watch, and there were great challenges, and you were great in it. So I'm so glad we had the chance to have this chat about your experience. It would have been super interesting if you got back in. I think it would have been way more interesting than Squin, as lovely as she is, or John, as chaotic, as like overtly chaotic as he is, just because all of your old yellows were still there. And that dynamic, I think, could have been incredibly interesting from a viewing point of view. Do you feel like you would have been trying to work with them? Do you think you would have been trying to, like, obviously the old rando birds were very down in numbers, so you would have had limited options.
Yeah.
Would you have targeted Andrew? What do you think you would have done if you'd been able to come back in that merge?
To be honest, like, if I'm being really honest, I was out for blood. Like, I would have been out for blood. And like, that's nothing against the tribe, because they're lovely people. Like, and
it's a game. It's a game.
It's a game, and
get back in there, get them all. I love it.
And from my point of view, I'm a complete survivor newbie.
Okay.
So like, from my point of view, I had no idea that social game was a threat. I was like, yeah, like, let's just like be a team, which obviously, really kind of bit me in the ass in the end, because I forgot that it's single as well as a team kind of game. But like, from my point of view, it's like, oh, they just kind of judged me on one game, didn't really let me show what I can do outside of puzzles and whatnot. And I thought it was like just a face value judgment of what I could do. And I think I even said that to Jay during our chats. You
did say that. We talked about that. So, and Todd was quite vehement in the comments that absolutely that it was nothing to do with that. You were commenting that it was you felt it was on your physical appearance, and that and we were feeling for you here on the program. And Todd in the comments was saying, and we understood why you felt that way. And Jules, who I don't know if you watch our show, Jules was saying she feels similar things sometimes. And so we were very much empathy with that situation. And then Todd was very clear, like, no, it was nothing to do with that. It was she was socially scary. But I'm sure for you, and that's very lovely to hear, that the reason you got voted out is because you're too nice. But equally, it must have been great because you felt it was on the challenges a bit. And for you to walk in, even though you didn't win that final duel, but to walk in and have all those old yellows see you still there and still fighting, that must have been a fantastic feeling as well.
It really was. It was. And I kind of wish that there wasn't as many lights shining in our faces as there were, because it would have been great to actually properly see their faces in the moment as well. Thank God, everything was being filmed so I can see it in the show. But it was just like a really kind of satisfying feeling going, oh, well, I feel like I had been judged for not being good enough in the challenges. And here I am, at that point, three joules later, about to go into my fourth one. It was a really good feeling. And like, I have to say, like, everyone in Gin and Dara have been great. Like they've reached out to me, once they realized that that's what was going through my head. And I also apologized to them because I had judged them thinking they judged me incorrectly as well.
You never have to apologize to anyone who voted you out, Amy. Never. They voted you out. That's it.
I can apologize to you.
I'll remember that for next time. But they all kind of, came to me and said, like, we just wanted to drive home the fact that wasn't it at all. Like, there wasn't even anything that happened off camera that hinted at that. So that's always good to see and to hear as well.
For sure.
Well, thank you for coming on, Amy. We're going to get on and talk about this episode 7 before we have John on later. But thank you for making the time. Sorry for the confusion. And you're always going to be the queen of the swamp. I don't know if that's a good thing to say or not, but you're definitely the queen of the swamp. So thank you, Amy.
Really swamp Queen Amy, I think, that Mel put in the comments. I think Queen of the Swamp is better than Swamp Queen.
It is. Swamp Queen sounds better than Queen of the Swamp, but it's really just the same.
I hear it the other way, but that's all right.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Amy. Lovely to have you.
Thank you. Okay, bye.
It's royalty. It's fine.
And that's gone funky again. And now joining us right on time, finishing the interviews like I planned it, fashionably late but perfectly on time as always. Let's welcome Annabel.
Oh my God. Hi. Oh, Amy, I love you. You are a queen and a legend, and we were all rooting for you.
I was absolutely rooting for her because I had her in my draft, and I just realized I got both players booted this week were my players. I'm literally down to Ed.
We were robbed of legends only this week. No one was more split screwed than the audience.
Oh, this was the failure of this episode, right? Failure of production.
We love you. It was not production could never fail in anything, but maybe this experiment didn't go the way that we would have loved it to go,
We had Oscar setting up a perfectly exciting Todd blindside at the start of the episode. And I'm like, I'm here for it. Let's go, Oscar. I love this. Going big. And then I think the mistake was his vantage was too overpowered, that he could basically just decide it all. But he was the good person to get it because he was going to set it up in the right way. But then give him the time to read it before the challenge. So he's got some time to actually think these things through. He should have had Todd there with Loz, so he could take Loz out if Todd wasn't an option, or Ed, or one of those three. That's how he would have planned it if he'd thought about it, but he had to do it in the moment. Is that how you guys felt?
I thought giving somebody the power to essentially decide who got to go home on both tribes was a lot. You basically gave one person power over dictating 2 eliminations, which is
huge.
A lot of power. I don't think that there was any way to make that better.
And maybe this is the thing I've just said. It would have been better for us if they gave Oscar more time to think about the actual permutations of his decision. But equally, that just makes it even more overpowered. Like, the only thing that made it hard was he had to do it in the instant. Moment. And, it's a, like...
The advantage should have been, right, you do a random draw for the 2 tribes, and one person draws a blank rock, and then Oscar gets to decide which tribe he joins and which one he sends the other person to.
Yeah, that's really good. I like that.
I think that's a good compromise.
Good, similar idea, but not as overpowered. I also think, giving such an overpowered advantage in an auction, it's just, well, you could bid for it, and it was a covered item bid, right? Like, it's just so much luck. That I guess everyone had the same chance. I just think, did we need this? I don't think we needed this. Obviously, they needed a double tribal, but yeah, this didn't go well.
No.
Did we? Are we bringing in John? Have we already? Oh, sorry.
John will chat, and then we'll have John.
Oh, okay.
Does it not go well because Oscar wins? Like, is that also why we're like a little down on it? Like, I get it's overpowered and those sorts of things, but then it doesn't play out the way, like, not that Todd wins. I mean, Oscar, for the moment, split it relatively okay, like for having to think of it on the spot, but then his plans are foiled because Oscar wins, because Todd wins. Sorry. Like, is that why we don't like it as much?
I think that whoever you give it to essentially has the power to dictate who goes home, because all they need to do is put 3 people who they know are never going to vote for each other together, and then include a couple of outsiders. So you can spin that whichever way you want it. I mean, I guess it's always going to be unfair to say John, Andy, specifically, because those two don't have any close numbers, whereas everybody else does at least have some close numbers. So I think John and Andy are in I go back to what we said a couple of weeks ago. Like, Andy, to me, his losing move was not getting rid of Oscar when he could have got rid of Oscar, because at that point he then locks in Pauline and Sab as his key allies. So I think Andy and John were in a bad position no matter who wins this, even if they won it, frankly. But I think for, say, the Todd of the world, who was in a really bad position as a result, and now Todd should know he's not in a great position.
Should he? How would Todd know this?
Because he was the only person who was stranded with not his swap tribe.
Yeah, but he doesn't. Do you think he's on the Oscar was trying? Todd's very smart, but do you think Oscar, he knew that he was trying to set him up?
I don't think he realized he was in as much danger as he was. I think he definitely knew he was an option at that point, and if they wanted to play something, he knew. Like, he says it in there. He says, "This is me or John at this point." So I knew I had to, because if John won, it would have been me. But I don't think he realized that Oscar was gunning as hard for him as he was.
He has to know he seemed expendable to Oscar in a way that clearly, like, Ed wasn't, right?
So I was just messaging John, who's waiting backstage. We're still going to chat about the show a bit more, and then we'll bring John in. I think that the situation is just... Did anyone think that Ed and Bethany might flip? Was anyone... Before production made it obvious to me it wasn't happening at Travel Council, thank you. Did anyone think that they might flip?
I think Bethany would have poo-pooed. I think Eden was down. I don't think Beth was ready to do that at that moment. She's like, she was feeling pretty comfy in the power of Loz and Ed, and like finally feeling secure in her numbers. I don't think she was ever going to flip there.
I think they're both acutely aware of the fact that the only reason that they're not getting voted out next is because of Loz. So while I think they've agreed that they need to take a swing at Ed, and they're not opposed to Todd going out, that it's way too early for them to put Loz offside.
Yes, agreed.
I can't see. Andrew tried to argue the point, but I can't see how it makes any sense for Bethany and Eden to flip. Like, Andrew's saying that they're going to be 5-4, but I just don't think that's very logical, because at 5, everyone's going to want to boot Loz. Well, not for Ed, obviously, because he's just up along for the ride, but certainly Todd is going to want to boot Loz by that point, because Todd will know he can't beat her, and Todd is a very savvy player, and Eden and Bethany are savvy players that know Todd's a savvy player. So for them, there's actually not a lot of disadvantage in hanging out in this 5. And I don't think Andrew could have said anything that realistically convinced him. I think the only thing that piqued Eden's interest is he likes a bit of spice. And
yeah,
he's probably just like, I'm bored and let's do something.
Absolutely, just for the sake of making a move.
No.
So it made it a very boring episode. That was just the killer for me. Like, we were setting up some really interesting stuff. Eden and John were going to reunite and see what they could do together. Oscar's looking to make a big move, and it's not on Andy. He's moved off the Andy attacks. He did suggest that the numbers that doomed Andy were a mistake and not necessarily an intention to boot Andy. We'll have to ask Oscar one day if that was true or not. I do think it was in the moment somewhat. So, that was happening, and this advantage ruined all that potential intrigue we could have had with the episode. It's hard to plan in advance, but it made the whole thing a little bit mundane. And then I thought that maybe Eden was going to vote. They were going to maybe do a different thing, but they showed him or Bethany writing down Andrew's name, or at least the beginning of the A. Or I think they had Bethany say her thing. Or I think we heard Eden say, "I'm the only economist here, like, get out." Like, whatever they did, like, and it was a good little voting thing. And I like how Andrew commented on Eden's supply and demand curve on the voting part. Because I don't know if Eden had told him he was also an economist. So that was because I think otherwise Andrew might have clicked that was Eden, whereas at the time he's like, whoever did that, that's a good supply demand curve. Yeah. So I felt that was a really like fun moment. But other than that, it was pretty obvious what was happening both times. And John's was the most obvious in terms of, like, he walked in saying, it said, I'm not in the chopping block, I'm chopped.
I'm chopped.
I'm already done. And it was a great quote that, he didn't have a chance in hell either.
I mean, the fact that both of them walked in knowing that they had absolutely no chance says it all. And it's unfortunate. I mean, we've got to experiment with twists and things like that. I get it. I'm sure no one was more annoyed by this outcome than the crew. Yeah. But it is unfortunate because I think that both Andy and John were going to be quite critical to the fight against what could be a Pagonging now as well.
I can't see how the triumvirate plus the two assorted rando birds cannot be the final five.
Yeah. It set up what could have been an exciting episode to be a dud, and it's potentially now set us up for dud episodes until the final five. But who knows?
Which is such a shame for this cast. Like, what we've had so far has been such great viewing and great gameplay, and it's, you normally see the opposite. Like pre-merge is kind of like, oh yeah, whatever's happening, and post and merge on is where it gets interesting. It's been the opposite here.
Yeah. I have to say, Mel said she was humming the Death March walking into that tribal. I do have to say, I'm going to get my history nerd on for a moment, but this triumvirate reference is really fantastic. So for those I'm sure my fellow orcas know all about it, but for those at home that do not, it was a grouping of three power people in ancient Rome. There were two triumvirates. The first one was Julius Caesar, with two other people that no one remembers, I could tell you, but you wouldn't care. But the one that really matters is the more famous one, and I think it's a great reference by Andy, and I think he's going to go into this detail. One was Augustus or Octavian, and one was Mark Antony, and they were basically jostling for ultimately who would be the winner and who would rule Rome. And you had the big name who was really well out there and seen and beloved in Loz or Mark Antony, and you had the more in the shadows, dark horse, strategic player who ultimately comes out the victor in Octavian, which I see as Todd. And there's this third guy whose name is also escaping me, who was just there because they needed three. And he just did what he was told. And it's the absolute perfect reference to these three.
That's fantastic. I love that.
Oh, Andy, he was still delivering on the way out.
He's never not going to deliver. I look forward to him delivering shortly.
Even his crap deliveries, like possum. I went to a Possum Magic interpretive classical ballet. Interpretive contemporary ballet performance the other day, and I thought of you, Andrew.
You could have been narrating it. It would have been incredible.
I know.
We will have him, but not until next week, sadly. But we will have John shortly to talk to us. I think we should talk about the auction because I thought it was really ironic how the American Survivor has brought back the auction, and it was actually this week. And we had an auction in Backyard Survivor. I think this was the first time Backyard's had an auction. Oh, sorry, Canberra's had an auction because Backyard have done them before. I think this was an incredible fail for a lot of reasons. Number one, you let them go home the night before. So everyone from Canberra went home to their house and presumably ate food, and then ate more food for breakfast, and then came to the thing. Equally, anyone who stayed there must have been allowed to eat food as well, because otherwise that's an unfair advantage for the people that went home. So no one wants the fucking food when they all just had dinner and breakfast. So it makes the whole thing boring. Like when I played and was on day 2 and ate nothing but rice for 2 days and then felt really sick in the merge feast, I would have jumped at the chance to eat something that I felt like eating, and it would have been more interesting. No one wanted a whole cake. Like, it just doesn't work if people aren't hungry.
Shout out to Ed, though, who, like, man, may not be delivering tops level strategy, but he was doing the most to make sure that that auction came through. Whenever anyone was like, oh, I don't know, Ed's like, you know what? I'm going to come in here. He's always the cheerleader. I love that about him. I didn't hate it. I thought it was good that they did mostly covered items. I loved the callback to the croissants. So like, look, it was fine. It was fine. It didn't offend me. It didn't thrill me. I liked that we had a little bit more of an Ed character moment. I liked when we saw Eden conceding to Loz, which was a strategic move, versus Ed, who's not thinking about it at all and just outbidding anyone. I thought it was fun.
Could it be served better if you're going to do auctions in an LRG to have more of the modern American Survivor format where there's a bit more gamification of the process?
No.
You just don't like the new format, I don't think.
Well, it's just the new format's ridiculous because then it's just the person with the most amount of money. It's not even an auction. It's just whoever has the most amount of money gets the next item.
Yes, but that's correct. And, then people would take the cake, so you wouldn't have this issue.
Yeah, I don't know. I wasn't offended. I wasn't offended by what we had. I thought it was fine. You're right. No one wanted the food, but jokes on them because the croissants of power. It was Pauline, wasn't it? Did Pauline not end up finding anything?
We don't know.
It will be revealed on the next episode whether she found the idol or not. But I think they wanted to not show her finding it because they showed John sort of looking around in there, and I think they were trying to maybe, make you think that maybe he got it. Like, just keep a little bit of suspense. I'm sure she found it. I was super sus on the croissants, and snaps for Pauline because I think she was also super sus on the croissants. The way Dan was just completely underselling it.
They're terrible.
They're terrible. Like, I'm like, something's going on here. I am suspicious about this situation. And if I was there with my Jeff bucks, I would have bid heavily on this.
She's switched on, Pauline. She's very switched on. She's unassuming, but she's clocking things around her.
Do we like, though, that the croissants of rage became the croissants of emotional support, though? Like, if we track the journey of the croissants throughout Canberra Survivor, they've kind of had their own character arc.
This is true. And frankly, if I had been on this season and I had won the croissants, even if I'd been trying to pretend I wasn't some sort of super fan, I would have crunched into that croissant and say, "This is for you, Dom," and rip off my shirt. Sophie did not enjoy the croissants. She's never enjoyed them. Stuffing that clue in the croissant was the worst part of my morning. They were stale and crumbly. And that's really... Did anything else happen on this episode? Like, have we really covered it in that short space of 20 minutes? This is sort of how I feel a bit.
Yeah, honestly, nothing more needs to be said. Let's bring in John.
Can I just say, though, the People's Champion, based on all our prediction now, who only has to make top 5, make the finale, is looking good for the cash. He might be bringing home the bacon for the Canberra community at my expense at this rate.
Come on, Eden.
Even if it is a begonging and we see Pauline go and Sab go and Oscar go in some order, probably Oscar first, that just means the money's on CK and then surely everybody wins. Even I win.
Yeah.
We get to go there. Like, hey, here's my money.
Community together. Awesome.
We're all happy. Mel, I'm not posting that, Mel. That seems spoilery.
I was like, so spoilerish, Mel.
Yeah, it's not necessarily a spoilery. She could be joking. All right, so now we have a third interview tonight. It's very exciting. I've been doing a lot of interviews because of the swamp and everything, and I couldn't get Jay on, I couldn't get Maddie on. But what a character our next guest was on this season. I sent him a post. I think he might have been suggesting this is something I said or someone said on this show. We're doing our draft about him bringing grandpa vibes.
I think that's something you would say. That sounds like you.
I don't know. I'm cautious about these statements after the backlash I got.
From Mel.
But what a great character. Just complete chaos, but in the most obvious way all the time. And you don't always get chaotic characters that are overt. They generally try to be subtle, whether they're subtle or not. Who knows? But they try to be subtle. The overt chaos was just fantastic across the board.
With zero malicious too, because often chaos, they're often quite malicious in their gameplay, even because they're trying to be so like downplayed. He had no malicious bone about him. It was just, here I am. Suck it up.
It was matter of fact.
Exactly, matter of fact.
Now we're going to bring him in to talk about his matter of fact, chaotic, overt game. Welcome, John. Great to have you.
Hey, Chris, Dani, Annabel, how are we going? Good to see you.
Hey.
So chaotic chaos is a little bit different to grandpa vibes, you know. And yes, Chris did say that.
Did I say that? Is that who said that?
He gives out grandpa vibes. So,
I think it was like I was saying in a positive manner, like you can trust him.
I'll go along with that.
Are you a grandpa?
No.
No, like it won't be far off. Like, come on.
Oh my God, CK, stop! You're making it worse.
No, it's okay. It's okay. I'm old enough to be.
Yes. He's speaking through the screen to his son, saying, "I would like a grandchild. Make it happen, so I can bring my vibes into this life." Speaking of your son, how much of him being involved in Canberra too is the reason that we got you here today?
Well, I was in Canberra season 3 because of his involvement. He was recruiting for season 3, and we're sitting around the table here, and I said to Nick, "Well, what if I had a go?" Because we all watched Survivor, the American, the Australian seasons as growing up. So he sort of looked at me and go, "Well, okay, I'm part of a selection panel, so we can put you forward." So that's what happened, and then I had an interview and got through that way. So, but yeah, I ticked the grandpa vibes person.
He's not letting it go, CK.
It's diverse. You're bringing a diverse dynamic to the program of someone who's not, 20 years old. Like that's what we want to see. And I think you did. There's that matter of factness of, I've lived many years and I just not going to be bothered with this shit when people are talking nonsense. Like as soon as you met, you knew that you're on the bottom at the old tribe. You get to yellow and you're like, Todd, Ed, Loz, you're the sort of people I like. You told them that straight up. I want to work with you. That no one thought you were being mischievous. You were being very honest and matter of fact about your situation, how you felt. And I think that that's a quality that people that have lived more years have in general. So they're the grandpa vibes.
Yeah. Well, look, I thought I was playing a pretty honest game, to be honest. So yeah, look, I did find myself on the bottom of the Bethany, Eden, and Anthea group, and I thought, this is not going to work. So I thought I could align with the other guys, and excuse me, I did for the first vote out of Anthea, sorry. And look, I think I had Todd and Ed still on board, but Loz was not going to budge, and I think Loz may have been pulling the puppet strings there for a little while for Todd and Ed.
Sorry.
Oh no, you go, Dani.
I was like, she was not letting you get that bromance on. She was she's the head of that 3, and she was not letting you muscle it on her boys that she's had.
Yeah, well, look,
there's no way.
It was Loz the head of the 3, to be honest. So I probably voted out Anthea at the time because I heard her doing moves. And so in a very short period of time, that's what I saw. But watching it back, I'm seeing Bethany and Eden with an idol. I'm seeing those guys, conspire to vote Aiden. I'm like, where did that come from? So looking back at it now, I can see that there's a fair bit of play going from Bethany and Eden.
Oh, absolutely.
a lot of the men seemed quite willing to work with you. And John, while I personally think you're a very handsome man, the women weren't really gelling with you. They weren't really picking up what you were putting down, and that ended up being, I feel like, one of the main factors in your inability to form a new alliance after Squin, obviously notable exception, but where do you think it was going wrong with the women on your various tribes?
Well, did it start from the beginning when we saw Bethany and Eden's introduction, both saying, I hate men. So they came into the game with that attitude. So what chance did I have? But as it played out, I didn't get much of a chance to talk anything with Bethany. Anthea, as she has said, that she was a little bit standoffish, didn't want to get the older group vibe. So there was definitely Squin. Very had good vibes with Maddie. So, of the original, Blackbird tribe, it was fine, and I had no issue with the other guys on the team. So, did I have an issue? Did I not connect with the ladies of the group? I even thought I connected well with Loz. So no, I'm going to say no. I didn't feel I had an issue.
How betrayed did you feel at the tribal council where you got voted out? Because you had been very honest to Ed, Loz, and Todd about where your position was, that you were willing to make the move to help them. You made that move to help them. You stuck by your word. And you not only had you made a strategic move with them, but it really felt from your confessionals that you'd made a genuine connection with the three of them. So of all the sort of times of getting voted out, when you get booted by people you feel that you had a genuine connection with, that's got to be very difficult.
Yeah, look, it was a tough call. And as I said, I think it was a tough call for Todd and Ed to make. But having now watched it back and I see the good work that Bethany and Eden did to scramble with Loz and form a little bond there. So that was probably the telling point. Which I didn't, I didn't see going on. So look, I to this day I believe my flip on the tribe was correct.
I agree. Yeah,
it worked okay with Anthea, but then I think with Loz joining up with Bethany and Eden, that was the downfall. But I think those three formed they're all strategic players. They know their stuff. They've done this before. Their head is probably more in the game than mine, and potentially put Ed and myself and to a lesser degree Todd as along for a ride and enjoying the show. I mean, I know how it works, but I think those three were, let's call them a power trio: Bethany, Eden, and Loz. They're good players. So credit to them. Was I disappointed about that? Of course, but got back in.
The getting back in would have made you feel a lot better. I do think that, you're exactly right, and that's what happened. But you were also quite unlucky. I think if Eden hadn't found that advantage that had been rehidden that allowed the mutiny, that therefore could have set up, say, a 3-3 and force a different situation. Like, there was that circumstance allowed Bethany to then push Loz to go a different way. Because otherwise I think it would have been difficult to get the numbers to go the way they went, because they could force the 3-3. It pushed, I would imagine, Ed and Todd over the line. So you got a bit unlucky. You got some strategic players who came in. But then, as you say, you got back in. How confident did you feel going into the challenge against the Queen of the Swamp, Amy? One had won every challenge beforehand.
Well, I didn't know. We didn't know how the swamp was going, because it was a side. So we didn't see the people. We didn't see who left. Well, we saw Amy was. I guess we sort of knew that Amy was still winning. So that was very positive. Up against Amy, and I didn't want to go up against Squin because I think we had a good alliance. Of course, when we were put there pretty quickly, we didn't actually know what the challenge was. It's like, here, hold this pole, put something on top of it. Oh, okay. But yeah, look, I thought I did okay on that because I focused. I looked straight ahead. I held it in a position that wasn't going to move. Looking back, I see we all held it in a different manner, and the other guys were looking up at it. I thought I had a pretty steady pole.
And you were the one that were able to best make the transition. And, there's a skill to a live transition, perhaps leaving a little bit later, because yours fell almost immediately after. They sort of fell 1, 2, 3. Did you leave the transition slightly late to get that advantage, or was that you just fell a bit later than them?
No, look, I there was nothing strategic about it. It was get the 2 on the pole. And look, I did sort of, maybe it put me off a little bit that I was going, oh, Squin just fell. Oh, Amy just fell. And then, oh, shit, I just fell. So there's probably a bit of that happened.
Mel Sheehan from Canberra Survivor 2 has a question for you. She said, did Mar's fiance, the winner of Canberra Survivor 2, give you any tips on challenges? She's not even naming your son. He's just Mar's fiance. Did he give any tips for how to, because he did dominate a lot of challenges in Canberra 2?
Well, he did, but he's there was no connection with Nick and I while I was playing the game.
No, before the game, like, was there a training regime, like a rocket situation?
I consider myself a relatively fit guy. In fact, if I'm sweating at the moment, I've just come off a touch football field.
Very nice.
But so I'm relatively fit. I'm shit at puzzles, I realise.
Me too.
So Nick is probably more broad on his puzzles and what he can do physically and whatever. But my attributes would probably be physical, and I can untie knots. Even the theory was I was cheating, but I certainly untied the knots a bit quicker than I was. But that comes from probably 50 years of sailing. So
yeah.
Did he give me any tips on challenges? Well, not really. We didn't know what the challenges were going to be, and I'm generally a fit person.
He's claiming it for himself.
Yeah,
Nick learnt it from John.
Nick learned from the best.
That's right. Nick learned from the best. Exactly. If you were 30 years younger, you would have won every challenge too.
Absolutely. Yeah.
A lot of these votes have been, other than yours that you spearheaded, John, have been fairly predictable, voting along, if not original tribe lines, swap tribe lines. It's often felt like you're the only person in there really advocating to mix things up along where, the power is settling. So I'd love to know from your perspective, John, who were you seeing as the major power players while you were there? And what if you'd had the relationships, what was your vision to gather the people at the bottom?
I will come back to, I probably was, pointing the finger at Eden from the beginning because I always saw him as a good player. I didn't have a lot to do with him, but it was certainly gunning for him. And that last scene of him, like him and I joining hands and becoming a power couple, it was all very true. Ed and I were very keen to work with each other. But
he's here live and here and
yeah, I know. Eden's my buddy. He's my buddy. And so look, I probably didn't see Bethany from at the time from my point of playing, but certainly watching it back, she did a lot. And knowing that Loz was the one who got Todd and Ed away from me, I'm like, so with the other guys, I really didn't get to see them much.
Well, why don't we talk a bit about, you come back in the game, and I was sure that production would give you something to help you through the first vote at least, or you or whoever came back from the Swamp of Sadness, some sort of immunity or advantage at that first vote. They didn't give you one, but you, of course, made one immediately for yourself. That was the time you couldn't untie the knots. The sailing didn't assist them. But did you, as soon as you saw that, be like, this is my ticket, whether this is an idol or not, I can play this as one, and I'll be safe. Did you? I know you've obviously probably one of the people that went home. How much were you thinking about? How am I gonna keep myself alive, at least for a vote or two, to start off with once I get going on day 2? What was your plan going in? On that
look, I didn't think I had any alliances at all. So I had to work out where those gaps were. And the best way to do that was to save myself. And look, I saw the potential idol sitting on top of that flag. I couldn't get the bloody thing off, So there was nothing subtle about it, to the point where I actually lied the flag down in front of everybody. And I'm trying to get it off. It just wouldn't happen. So, but I was openly telling people, well, I'm going to play it. And I've got chatter in the background. Oh, it's not a real idol, John. Oh, it might be. Or, John, you're wasting your time. I don't care.
I'm doing it anyway.
And I'm playing it. Yeah. So yeah, and look, let's be honest, it bought me another day in the game. Because they split the votes, and I scared Eden enough by saying, well, I'm voting against you, and I'm voting against you, and I'm rallying troops against you. And so Eden took himself out of the vote. So that helped me as well. And Loz, what I say to you, actually, got on well with Loz, even though she voted against me. That last one coming in when I was on the chopping block, Loz turned to me and she said, if you want to save yourself, vote for Aiden. So there was no Eden to vote for.
Yeah.
If I want to save myself, I voted for Aiden.
Did you feel bad about that, or was it it seemed at the time very matter of fact, it's you or me, this is what I got to do? Did you feel bad? Because he had been a very loyal ally of yours the whole time.
Absolutely. Look, I think I may have said, holding up the vote, sorry, mate, it's either you or me. So, yeah. So then when I met him backstage on the jury, it's like, well, sorry, mate, I had to do it.
You did, and he regretted not voting for you, and because that could have saved him. You had some great voting confessionals actually in the book. There was that one where you wrote Ed and made it look like you were going to vote for Ed and changed it to Ed. And you seem to be having just like a lot of fun with the whole experience, no matter what was going on.
Yeah, look, it all happened very quickly. We all had to scramble from challenges to tribal councils to being pulled away for interviews and and then voting, and then so it happened very quickly. So, but yeah. Did I miss the question? What was the question?
I just feel sometimes that other people.
I'm impressed. I was always thinking, how would my dad do? And his only real skills are painting Warhammer figures and bird watching. So, and he needs to lie down after a short run.
No, I missed the question. Tell me the question again. I got off on a rant there somewhere.
No, I think So, all right, let's pretend this nightmare of a twist never happens. Oscar seems to be rallying votes for Todd. You have a reasonable vote with Todd. You've now, or a reasonable relationship with Todd, I should say. You and Eden are now back on board. If we're all voting together as one unit, what was your strategy going into this round? Were you planning on being a little bit less forceful, or did you have a vision you wanted to push?
I thought I scrambled a lot when I got back in the game, thinking I didn't have any alliances. So my next point was, okay, I'm going to be the first person back to the where we're all staying, because Adam was there by himself and he was anxiously waiting for me to be voted out. I made a point of getting back there and saying, hey, mate, we need to ally. And he was on board, and we were good. And so there was the opportunity that Eden and I were going to do some stuff. But then all of a sudden it got flipped when we got into two different tribes. It was like, oh, what the? And so on that occasion, well done to Oscar. I mean, there's been a bit of talk about, did he do the right pick or not? The reality with Oscar is he picked me with Pauline and Sabrina to vote out Todd.
Yeah.
Well, Todd got the immunity, so I was stumped.
You could have been in look, obviously we don't want any spoilers on what happens to the game from here, but just, projecting it out, if Todd had gone there, if he hadn't won immunity, you would have been like, this is an amazing lifeline. You would have felt you could have worked with Oscar and Sabrina and Pauline after that. Like, I think the game, as we're going to see unfold, could have unfolded so differently. And I can't see you being a target like immediately. You could have gone very deep just by that one unlucky twist and then unlucky person winning the immunity.
Yeah, well, look, there's lots of twists in the game, and that's how it rolls. But yeah, so what if? I mean, it would have had I would have been thinking, well, working with Oscar, Pauline, and Sabrina, but then I had, I've just made an alliance with Eden. I know that Todd and Ed are probably keen to get away from Bethany and Loz, so there could have been a few options, but that's all,
There was the first time in the game since you basically got booted. Well, pretty other than that one time you joined up with the Yellows, you would have had just a huge variety of options in how to move forward, and it would have been very exciting to see you play that because, as I said in the intro, you had this fantastic, somewhat overt, honest, balls to the wall approach that really just got shit done, which in this sort of format where it's very, very quick, people can be receptive to that. They can also find it off-putting, but in the crunch of the merge, I reckon people would have been really interested in, like, John's saying this and like, yeah, let's get on board with that. Like, I think that you would have had the relationships and the demeanor to push into the end game. It would have been fascinating to watch.
Yeah. Well, look, I said in my introduction that with Survivor, you have to vote everybody out, and if you're on the final three, well, you're telling people how good you are against them. So, look, I had a ball, and I understand why I was out after, when I was, and that's just how it rolled. So I didn't have an issue with it. Would love to have gone further, of course, but it was what it was.
You were brilliant, John. You only person who could potentially give Andrew a run for his money on the ORCA of the season, I reckon. You said in your final words that you'd do this all again. If you were asked back, you'd give it another shot. It can be, having now had time away, having time to watch it back, it can be a very mentally draining experience. But you strike me as a pretty stoic guy. Would you still sign up and do this a second time?
Yeah, I'd do it again.
And what would you do anything differently? Would you take the same approach, or how would you approach it second time around?
How would I approach it differently? Look, I thought I played the game okay. I read what I had to do, and I saw things happening. Certainly saw a lot more things happening after watching it back, which I didn't know about. But yeah, I think I'd look, if I go back to the very first 10 minutes of the game, I quickly linked up with Aiden. Oh, sorry, not Aiden. Yeah, Aiden. And I said, mate, we need to link together. You go and find somebody. I'll go and find somebody. We'll have 4. Try and get one else. We had Squin. I thought we had Maddie there for a point because Maddie was flipping and telling us who to vote for. But, I mean, I didn't come up with the J name, I don't think. So, it was the
right. That was the right plan. And Aiden actually said last week that one of his regrets was not actually grabbing Jay, and he actually had sort of felt like Jay was he had a good vibe with him, and he thought about grabbing him, but then he got a bit hesitant about having a bit of a strategic conversation with him so early, and he didn't do it. And that was actually one of Aiden's regrets.
Yes. So, look, that would have been a very tight 4-4, wouldn't it? I mean, we already saw voting in the first round, go 4-4 and then 3-3. And then, fortunately, I was the one sitting on the end. So I
shots in that travel.
And that's pretty, again, you set up your moment of this very honest, upfront, and straight to the point. No, I'm not voting out Aiden. And then everyone just caved.
Yeah, well, they had to, didn't they?
But
they want to get right.
The thing is, I think if you'd sat at the end, you would have been exactly the same.
Absolutely.
And you'd be like, I got a rocks. And then I think people would have, caved. Because you had that strength about your conviction.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, look, if I was at the other end of the voting and they'd, everyone had said Aiden, I'd be like, well, better go Aiden.
Would you, or would you say no? Rocks.
No. Sorry, Aiden, I wasn't going to rock.
Yeah, not sticking his neck out there.
Love it. Do you have any more questions, Dani or Annabel?
No, it was such a thrill to watch you. I can't emphasize enough that this season is worse off. Like, amazing they brought you back. Can we have another twist so that you're back in there mixing things up again, please?
Well, actually, speaking of twist, I'll tell you a twist. After the game had finished, and that final where I was like, okay, I'm chopped, I'm gone. After the game had finished, Nick said to me, "Oh, there's a hidden idol underneath the voting thing. You know, I wish you would have looked. You know, this was when the game had finished."
Yeah.
I thought, oh, well, you know, my head wasn't in the game with some of the other people at that stage. I think I was gone. So yeah.
Yeah, you knew it was you, so you just weren't even thinking about
whether
it.
Pauline gets it or not.
Yeah, we'll have to wait and see till next week. Thank you so much for being with us, John. Thank you to our earlier guests, Squin and Swamp Queen Amy. Next week, we'll be covering episode 8, which, of course, comes out this Friday. And we'll have an interview with whoever is booted, hopefully. And also Andrew, finally getting Andrew on the ORCA pod. When we did our ORCA rank down and we covered Backyard Exile, I tried so hard to get Andrew to appear on the tea party, and he was just too unavailable. But he will be here for this podcast next week. I cannot wait to chat with Andrew. But it was so good chatting with you today, John. Thank you for coming on. Thank you for playing and being such a fantastic character on this season. Thank you, Dani.
And thanks for doing these sort of podcasts. We sort of promote the Survivor, live reality games that are out there. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. You said it at the end of your final words about, you know, how fantastic this community is and that you got to be a part of it. These people that are coming out and creating and crewing and not being paid. And, it's all people doing it for the love of the game and the community. And that's what we're about too. So we know you appreciate it. So thank you very much for those words. Thank you, everyone that watched live. We really love you here watching live and commenting, but also those of you listening or watching after the fact. We appreciate your support as well. Until then, we will see you next week.